There's something nobody really talks about when it comes to waking up. People online will tell you about manifestation, higher consciousness, the occult, secret knowledge, hidden history, all of that sort of stuff. They make it sound like once you see the truth, everything becomes magically clearer and easier and somehow lighter. Here's the problem. Nobody tells you what happens when you see too much too fast, with no one around to help you hold it. I mean, it's not exactly like there's a guide to any of this or some sort of helpline. Yeah, it's a Caro just phoning up. What's going on? Well, funny you ask. I've realized the world is fake, and I'm fake because I don't have a clue who I really am underneath this mask the fake world forced me to wear. Hello? Still there? Nobody talks about the stage where awakening doesn't feel like liberation. Rather, it feels like poison, and this is far more common than people think. See, when everything is new and you're viewing the world with a new set of eyes, you can't tell what's true from what's fiction. Everything is equally profound and dangerous. I remember back then, I didn't have discernment yet. I didn't have any filters. Every idea hit me raw, the good and the bad. And honestly, I could make an entire video about just this point alone. It's a huge issue within the online spiritual space, and one that doesn't get talked about enough. Anyway, if you've ever gone too deep into esoteric knowledge, conspiracy rabbit holes, occult symbolism, secret societies, and instead of feeling free, you ended up feeling more bitter, more isolated, and more disillusioned, then you're exactly who I'm talking to. And look, I want to say this up front because recently when a clip from my Dark Night of the Soul video went viral, a lot of people misunderstood me. I'm not against esoteric knowledge. I'm certainly not against truth, and I'm definitely not telling anyone to avoid walking the path. What I am saying is that nobody warns you about the psychological cost of seeing behind the curtain before you're ready to understand what's back there. For me, awakening didn't look like, love and light pouring into my life. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows and a dose of enlightenment that I could buy for $10 a pop. It felt like something tearing open inside me. A rebirth I didn't ask for, nor was I prepared for. A poison I had no idea how to cure. Why? Because once you see behind the curtain, once the illusion collapses, once that first crack happens, you can't unsee it. You can't crawl back into the person you were. There is no pretending. I used to think ignorance is bliss was just a saying. I didn't realize it was a stage you permanently leave. And let me tell you something right now. It's a strange kind of grief. Losing a world that never really existed, but still meant something to you. So what happens? What's the cost of peeling back the curtain? Well, you pay for this new vision with the world you used to live in. And that's a scary time of your life. For me, it started harmlessly enough. I was studying natural law, alchemy, hidden history, occult symbolism, various mystery traditions which I may or may not get into during this video. Let's just say stuff you know to keep quiet about when you're around normal people. Also, if we're being honest, and there'll be a lot of that during this video, if you're new here, I don't mince my words, there is a rush to it. That feeling of discovering the real script behind the world, the truth that no one else seems to know. However, underneath that rush, something darker was forming, something I didn't recognize at the time. That's what this video is about. It isn't the romance of awakening, but the part no one prepares you for. So if you're in that stage, halfway between awakening and collapse, you're in the right place. Trust me, I've been there. You're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. At first, to put it plainly, it began with curiosity. I was very curious about how things actually worked. I just wanted to understand, and I wanted to acquire that understanding by any means necessary. When I say I was hungry for knowledge, I was hungry for knowledge. The unknown is very seductive in that sense. Once a seed of intrigue takes hold of you, it's almost impossible to escape it. I had questions that kept me up at night and a burning desire to have them answered. Why does the world feel the way it does? What is the real truth? Why do people behave the way they do? Why does so much of life feel off? So I started reading, I started watching, I started listening. More late nights spent studying various forms of esoteric knowledge than I can recall. If it were a university degree, I'd have a doctorate. Endless rabbit holes, one idea leading to another, seeing how a lot of this is linked but never quite finding explicit answers, only more questions which lead to more rabbit holes and then more ideas. You get the gist. Natural law, esoteric symbolism, alchemy, hermeticism, various forms of occult knowledge, both light and dark, hidden history, even Kabbalah at one point, but that's a story for another time. At first, it felt incredible. It felt like I'd been handed a map no one else knew existed, and as I said before, there is a rush that comes with that, a real one. You feel alert, you feel awake, you feel switched on, you start connecting dots everywhere, patterns appear where there used to be randomness, synchronicities seem to keep on unfolding, and if I'm being completely honest, there's a subtle sense of being chosen that creeps in, not in an arrogant way at first, but more like, why am I seeing this and nobody else is? I guess it gave me some sort of mystical meaning or divine purpose, this feeling that I was special somehow. I'd be awake at 3 a.m, watching lectures, piecing things together, feeling like the world is finally making sense, and then I'd step outside the next day and feel completely disconnected from everyone around me. That's when something started to shift. Gradually, insight turned into isolation, and I didn't notice the difference. I hope some of my close friends watch this video because they'll tell you firsthand in the comments, I went into hermit mode for over a year. Most of my friends live fairly close to me, yet I'd only see them once every 6 months, maybe. Put it this way, the pursuit of knowledge took over my life. Slowly, over time, when I did venture outside my cave, I stopped seeing people. Instead, I started seeing programming. I'd listen to conversations, and instead of hearing individuals, I'd hear scripts, usually inherited, beliefs recycled from parents or culture or religion or politics or social conditioning, unintegrated wounds. And despite recognizing this, I'd mentally class the people I came across into archetypes, like they were some sort of foreign species only I could understand. It was like once I'd learned the pattern, I couldn't unsee it. And at first, that felt like clarity. Looking back, it definitely was not clarity. It was distance. I wasn't relating to people anymore. I was observing them. I'd walk through London and feel like I was surrounded by NPCs, and that thought should have scared me more than it did, because instead of compassion, it started producing something else. Frustration, irritation, eventually, dare I say, resentment. I remember thinking things like, how can you not see through this? How can you still care about this meaningless stuff? How stupid are you? How can you just go on living like everything's normal? That's when I crossed the line without realizing it. On the surface, it looked like awakening. I was gaining all sorts of hidden knowledge. That equates to spiritual growth, right? Back then, that's what I thought. In reality, it was the beginning of withdrawal. There's a line from Dostoevsky that really captures this state. The idea of loving humanity in the abstract, but struggling to love the human being standing right in front of you. Honestly, it's not easy for me to admit this, but I want to keep this video transparent. That was who I used to be. I cared deeply about truth, about humanity, about waking people up, but I had very little patience left for actual humans. And that's how the poison crept in. Not all at once, quietly, over time, disguised as insight. The more I learned, the more alone I felt. The more I saw, the less connected I became. And I didn't notice the danger because everything I was experiencing felt intellectually justified. I thought I was becoming clearer. I didn't realize I was becoming colder. There came a point where I had to stop and actually ask myself, what exactly is happening to me. Because the more distance I got from that period of my life, the clearer the truth became. It wasn't the knowledge itself that poisoned me. It was the state I was in when I received it. Let me explain. Knowledge is neutral. Okay, by itself it holds no power. And that's not even going into the difference between applied knowledge and knowledge that you do nothing with, but I don't want to confuse anyone watching the video at this point. However, whilst knowledge is neutral, the psyche receiving it is not. And if your inner world isn't ready, knowledge doesn't expand you, it splits you. And from everything I've lived and everything I've watched happen to others, there are three main ways it turns toxic. Let's start with the first one. At this point, I didn't realize it, but I wasn't becoming enlightened. I was becoming inflated. Once you start seeing programming, it's very easy to start despising the programmed. And the irony here is insane. You think you're becoming free, but your heart is shrinking. You start loving truth, the idea of truth, more than people. This is where Nietzsche's abyss begins to whisper for the first time. Not the full descent, just a whisper. Be careful. If you stare too long at the abyss starts staring back. Most people misinterpret that quote as, don't think too deeply. That's not what he meant. What he meant was when you stare at the shadows of the world without enough inner light, the shadows reshape you in their image. And this is the thing that no one tells you when you first begin walking this path. Light and shadow aren't opposites in the way people imagine. They exist inside each other. Hermeticists call it the law of polarity. Taoists express it through yin and yang. Every light carries a seed of darkness, and every darkness carries a seed of light. So when your inner light isn't strong enough, the polarity kind of reverses. Instead of you transforming the shadow transforms you. You start believing that because people are unconscious, you must rise above them, you must separate, you must be different. Before you know it, truth turns into elitism. Insight turns into irritation. Awakening turns into nothing more than emotional superiority. That's the first poison. This is where Nietzsche's abyss isn't just whispering anymore. It has its hands around your throat. Once you see through society, through institutions, through structures and ideas that hold no real meaning, once you realize how much of life is inherited, conditioned, manufactured, there's this terrifying moment where you genuinely ask, alright, well, if everything is illusion, what's the point of participating in any of it? This is the deeper meaning of Nietzsche's warning. The abyss isn't the world. The abyss is the collapse of meaning inside your own psyche. It's the moment where every structure falls apart and you're left floating in the void with no anchor. Here's the brutal truth. If your inner foundation isn't strong, you don't float, you drown. You think you've achieved some higher state of nothing matters, but really you've just lost the ability to care. This isn't awakening. It's nihilism disguised as spiritual growth. Once you learn about illusion, once you learn the world isn't what it seems, you're presented with two temptations, and both look spiritual on the surface. Temptation 1, hate the world. You see the systems, the corruption, the deception, and you harden. You take the red pill so aggressively that you sever the ability to love anything human. This is the Gnostic trap of demonizing the physical world, believing that everything material is beneath you. Temptation 2, escape the world.